to the measurement, uh, yeah, I think it's very powerful when we go back a few years ago, actually a decade ago or a few decades ago, when one particular individual made a fantastic philosophical discovery in the world of business, in the world of education, in the world of philosophy. And that person, I've had the pleasure of working with that organization, and I know that my dad met that person physically, which a lot of people wanted to meet as well, which is Dr. Stephen R. Covey. And Dr. Stephen R. Covey is actually a revolution. There's few people in the world who has made, and perhaps one of the things we are both interested in is the science of business. He's probably went to the spiritualness of business at some level. So when he went through that, one of the things he mentioned very specifically is circle of influence and circle of concern. And I think that is a powerful, powerful Venn diagram to start with for our impact measurement. So essentially what we are looking at, everywhere around us, there is an environment. There's an environment we can concern about, like global warming, like clean water, like people from Africa or various other countries having proper access to education and proper access to food. Those are somewhat concerns. We may not be able to solve all of it, but we are concerned about it. And that's good. That creates focus, that creates goals, that creates smart values, and smart as in not clever, but smart as in specific, measurable, achievable, result-oriented, and time-bound. But there's an inner circle around the concern that we can influence on. You have global warming problem, try managing your own electricity usage. You have clean water solution, try using lesser clean water and more purposefully. You have access to education concern, try contributing what you know to the social media channels because it's available anywhere, everywhere. And you're worried about food, don't waste it. These are the influence that we can make, just certain amount of it. But these creates a massive wave, the butterfly effect that we speak about. And I'll speak more about it, but I want to know and hear from Michael of the derivation of what Dr. Stephen R. Covey did and what it could lead for us to do more on top of it and around it.
Firstly, I'm amazed, I really shouldn't be amazed, that you love Stephen Covey like I do, because I've literally got his books on my shelf. His material is life-changing. So if you like to read or if you like to know anything about business leadership, more importantly, relationships. The guy was absolutely incredible. So fantastic recommendation, Eric. I think what you've just said there about influence and concern can help bridge a gap that we talked before about in relation to AI and people feeling overwhelmed or feeling fearful is absolutely right. If you said to a 5-year-old, you know, when you leave school, you're going to have to do all this stuff and it's going to be these tests and pressure, the 5-year-old is not going to be up for that. Where, having said that, a 5-year-old is allowed to play and learns these routines, and they often sing before they can write, and is eased into a way of understanding learning. And I had a fantastic mentor, and she said, when a child leaves school, they should know how to learn and want to learn. Everything else is secondary. So I thought that was very good. And what that does is, it was William Blake who said we all move from ignorance to experience, right? We're all very ignorant at the start. We don't know what we don't know. I don't know half the things you know. And as we move through that experience, we grow in our ability to influence positively and negatively, right? So when you're crossing a street, if you know there's cars there and you have to be careful, if you forget that for a second, you might get hit by a car. But every time you look, you keep yourself safe going forward. And I think there's something very, very empowering about a person understanding the impact they can have, just their own influence. And I don't mean influence in relation to social media, you know, influencer terms. I genuinely mean about a person saying, what can I do to impact going forward? I am able to do things. And I actually said this to somebody who's a client last week, and I said, you start really simply. And I said this, and I don't know if you've ever had this, or anybody who's watching this, when you say something and afterwards you think, that's pretty good, that. I wonder where that came from. I said this to this person, and I just said, we're doing some stuff in communication. And I just said, the words you use are the quickest and most free way to create positive change. Just how you talk to people. Just how you talk to people, the words you use, like you said before, different question, different result. It's the same thing when you're talking to people, especially adults in business. The way that you praise people, is it generic or is it specific, right? The way you approach conflict and all these things. And so coming back to what you said there, the influence and concern, it can just start very simply with how am I talking to other people interpersonally? And then also you can apply it into intrapersonally. How am I talking to myself? Because often they're linked, aren't they? The people that think it's all over and the world is ending and all that will project that in a negative impact towards people. But then the people that believe in the future and they believe in a way forward will then create that way forward. And I want to just give you a specific example of somebody I've mentioned to you, who I love, a Dutch entrepreneur and inventor called Boyan Slat. So Boyan Slat proved perfectly well on a tangible level what Arif's just saying about influence and concern. He's very concerned about the amount of plastic in the oceans. But instead of sitting there and doing nothing about it, he thought, right, what can I do? And he created something called the Ocean Cleanup Company. And he single-handedly built these incredible machines that attract plastic, and for over 10 years now has been ridding the oceans of plastic. And I absolutely love that, because that's a perfect, practical, tangible example of somebody who's done exactly that. He was concerned, he understands he has a level of influence, he's an engineer, so he can create services, products, solutions. Engineers create solutions. He just applied that ability to create a solution, ask the right questions, such as, how do we do something about this, rather than why is it happening? How do we do something about this is a better question. And how do we fix it? And I just love it. For over 10 years, he's just, just Google Boyan Slat. So I hope that's helpful, Arif, in taking it from my thoughts to a specific example of somebody who's put Covey's principles into action.
Amazing, amazing. This is where I think a formula is rightful in place to be put by us, which is, what is awareness? And perhaps even going back is, how can we all be aware? How can we use the power of the future, the AI, the predictiveness of it, the diagnosticness of it, the ability to do more with AI can make us more aware. So what is awareness? Perhaps that formula will link perfectly. It's not having more knowledge. It's about linking knowledges. So when we get the person that Michael mentioned earlier, we were all knowledgeable about plastic pollution problem. But what he did, he is able to connect few other knowledges around plastic pollution and created a company around it, built a process, and because of that, impact is formed. So essentially, that's a question to our dear audience and to us as well. What knowledges are currently supporting the impact that you wish to make? And what more of the knowledge that you still require? Those are capabilities that can be drawn from someone. Those are capabilities that can be learned. Those are the decisions you need to make to ultimately build a process together. Elon Musk, my dear friends, is not a space guy. He's not a science guy who knows everything about rocket science. Yet, he built the most successful rocket company in the history of the world. That means he linked knowledge together. He made us aware of rockets and the importance of rocket as we move forward in the future. Now, these perhaps lead to two different styles of formula. Again, now we're speaking more about measurement. And I love I have a very different thought now. I've grown up, I've matured, I would rather say, into education. Because previously, the whole reason why I started my company or my professional work life at 11 years old, and my company, an education company at 14 and a half, is to fix education, because I felt there was some massive challenges that it needed to fix. But now, 17, 18 years later, I realized that the concept of what education is trying to do is perfect. But application needs to mature as well. So the concept of education is very practical. You learn the compoundness of the materials of the world, everything that exists, through the power of what we use chemistry as the word is. You understand the principles of how everything behaves through the power of physics as a subject. You understand the logic, the linkages, as we just mentioned, the knowledge and linking the knowledge together through an algorithm, through the way of linking understanding, and that is mathematics. You understand how all of that functions in the most, and still to this date, irreplaceable and irreplicable material of Earth, which is human beings, that is biology, and for us to function continuously. We understand how to motivate words and understand the word logic that goes behind in creating mindsets and impact and work itself. That is language, English, Bengali, Malay, Spanish, Chinese, whatever it is part of communication model. It's a part of alignment model. So when we look back at these 5 subjects, and now included computer science for problem solving, computer science essentially is what we understand as problem solving. That's it. That's all it does. It is a beautiful education system because it completes the package of what we want and who we are here for. Yet, we are not applying this. Perhaps we don't even understand the whole gist of it into how we want to move further. That leads to lifelong education, but more importantly, that leads to a very powerful, the education that we require, are we able to get it? So we'll speak about this into 2 terms that I figured is very powerful, taking back from science, is oscillation, convergence, and divergence. I'll come back to that convergence, divergence later, but before I want to head off to that topic, I believe Michael has a lot more treasure to add to this palette or plate even.
Wow. I think the biggest thing that you've touched on there that maybe I've got some experience to share is application. And my background, for anybody who's watching this and listening to this doesn't know, is in education, being a teacher, specifically teaching younger children. I've taught people now, what was it, as young as 4, as old as 70. And I always was very aware of application. So for example, my first ever adult student was 69 and he wanted to learn guitar, right? It's a very simple application. He wanted to have a YouTube channel and he wanted to be in a band, and he achieved that. And then the youngest obviously were 4. And the biggest thing that he usually came up with against with boys, sometimes with girls, mainly with boys, is like, why are we doing this? What's the point? Why are we doing this? They're sat on this potential, but unless they see tangible application, benefit, solutions, fun, growth, then they're not going to engage. And so you could make a point that there's almost like a formula, like Arif was saying, that begins with engagement. You have to care. You have to be interested. Your brain, like I said before, it needs to be switched on. If you really are interested and passionate in something, you will switch on, you will learn. If you're not, that same brain is sat there kind of half asleep, to be honest. So like a dog, we were saying before, is the dog asleep? Or is the dog like, you are my favorite person in the world? And then it ends in application. So I'll give you an example. We were writing letters to astronauts to try to improve English skills, writing skills, 7-year-olds. And I actually found the address for NASA headquarters and got an envelope and got the stamps. So when we had the usual people saying, oh, why are we doing this? We're just writing something. I said, I'm actually going to send this to NASA. And they said, no, you're not. And I said, I've got the envelope here in my hand. I've got the stamps all ready to go. You should have seen them. I've never seen people write so much, so diligently. You could have heard a pin drop. I think it was 40 minutes of silent writing by 30 children. Yeah. So all that happened there was my just ability to step outside for a second and say, sometimes what we do isn't particularly interesting. But if we have a reason for doing it and we know where it's going to end up, then our potential becomes realized and our impact can be 1,000% stronger, because we're tapping into the true potential. And yet we have to remember that to compute something just means to put it into a format. The original computers, apparently, according to the origin of the term in English, were women. A lot of women's jobs used to be computers. They would compute things. They would put things onto databases, and that's where it comes from. And a lot of computers are based on human brains. It's very, very simple. People think these computers are wizards and magic. They're not. They're very simple in some ways. And that application thing, by the way, can be applied in all sorts of different ways. So I had somebody who I used to teach jiu-jitsu to, and he said to me, "I love to be an astronaut, but I can't because I'm dyslexic." And I went away and studied, and I found out, and did you know that one third, 33% of astronauts are dyslexic? And so that barrier was just removed, like you said before, with a quick question, the right knowledge, there you go, no excuses, you know. And that's come up actually again last week in conversation. So all I'm adding to what Arif has said beautifully is before they have the subject or the knowledge, it's understanding what engagement means to that person. And that's the beautiful thing about human beings. Some people love cat videos, some people can't stand cats, some people don't like dogs, some people are fluent in Spanish, some people are fluent in Bengali, some people are atheist, some people are Islamic. We have to know that, because otherwise we can have the best processes, the best model, the best strategy, it's good to go. But if you're putting it out there and they're not taking it, you know, the engagement's not there, the application is not going to be there, and the impact is not going to be there.
Amazingly said, absolutely fantastically concluded. Just to paraphrase on what we touched upon throughout this whole conversation is, more importantly, is the need to find the elements around impact that truly makes an impact happen. If we go right from where we left earlier, from having a reason to building a linkage of knowledges, to getting to a purpose, to getting to a level of application, and then moving further back onwards is to have that proper education within ourselves to understand how to link ourselves into the impact that we wish to serve, but also to build that environment around impact that requires an impact to be processed if you didn't bring that on. So essentially, those astronauts felt, those children felt a desire, because that was true. That was their end in mind, and you created that environment to have that impact in the first place. So all of this are critical components towards building where we wish to be aligned towards, is to have this humanity work well together, to have this humanity work well with the data that are constantly appearing around us, within us, for us, with us, against us sometimes, but important to us to understand as well. One of the things Michael mentioned are the 3 C's are very, very critical: competitiveness, collaborativeness, and communication combined together. That makes frictions are powerful, because friction allows acceleration to happen. If there was no friction, there would be no acceleration, and we would either be all still or moving. That's literally Newton's first law of motion. So moving back to measurement, and we'll speak a lot more on this as we go into this part. We have surprises for you coming soon, still coming soon. We'll keep you in suspense, but soon to come. But one of the 2 critical words are convergence and divergence in this part. I'll share them first, and then I'll look forward to hearing more from Michael to add on to. But just very simply, convergence means essentially for us is, what can I do? Am I aligned to the impact that I wish to create? That is the first question we should be asking ourselves. To understand that, again, going back to the circle of concern and circle of influence, if I'm able to influence that, do I want to influence that? Now, understanding that makes a whole lot of difference. That guy, that Dutch entrepreneur, wanted to make plastic pollution to go away. And because his desire was so powerful, he made it happen. That's what all the billionaires say all around the world: passion. Yes, passion comes with many other things, but that's the core of what led for them to do what they wanted to do. So essentially, when we speak about that, there's 5 components that fuels these influence factors. Number 1, what are my behaviors around this? This can be the modified behaviors initially. Am I modifying? Yes, I love spending a little bit more electricity in my house. I love the lights. I love the view. Am I modifying my behavior just a little bit enough to close or to switch off one of the lights that perhaps I won't need? Second is, what are the core behaviors that powers my modified behaviors? This is where a very good personality profile comes to place, which is DISC. You can actually look it up. It's free online. It's very well-tested environment. You can actually test yourself how you behave in a certain situation. DISC can really help you look at your own core behaviors. Then when you go back just a little bit more towards, we're converging now internally, where you see your attitude. Are some of the things still fixed, or are you like water? Are you able to fluidly move around the space that you're in? Or how much are you allowing yourself to be more fluid? The agility that goes around the business, the need to have technologies come into place are all based on agile structures, fluid structures. Am I willing to grow into this future? Or am I constantly wanting to establish my fixed understanding? These are 2 critical behaviors or attitudes all of us need to look at. Now, when we go deep, a little bit more inside it, we see the values. What are some things that will never change for us? The principles that we will never, ever compromise. But that's not all. There's one final component to your convergence, which is your talent. That never changes. And that leads to, what are the core functionality of me? What are your user manual? If you want to know this, there is a way to know it. But do you want to know your own user manual? A lot of us actually fear our own user manual, thinking we can never change. But a lot of us can do more. We just have never looked inward enough. That is convergence. There's plenty more to speak more about, but I want to hear from Michael on what you think of the first component of impact potentially.
I think it's fantastic. The only thing I would add, just to add a little bit, play devil's advocate, is divergence. So just to speak briefly, the 5 points you've identified is very good. And I think there's something to be said for divergent thinking as well. The danger is we don't want everything to be homogenized, meaning we're all doing the same financially. Any broker will tell you that is a terrible thing, because if everybody's doing the same and it all goes wrong, we all suffer. So that ability to just be a little bit different, to recognize, like Ara said, you are unique. And the best piece of advice I ever got, somebody said to me, it's your business, you do it your way. So you have all these tools, you have all these things, and then sometimes just that ability to just look at something a little bit different, like an artist or a musician. So that divergent thinking in me has really helped me sometimes. The bits that I thought this isn't going to be very helpful in this context has actually created something unique and something different. So as well as convergence, it's very important to understand that sometimes we have to you need to know the rules, you need to know your user manual, know yourself, so you can sometimes break them, right? Not always, but just occasionally just needs to be that little bit of thing, that person who just goes, I think we should do it this way. I think we should turn this on its head. I think we can, and you apply that divergent thinking, because AI is not going to give you divergent thinking. If you've got 10 friends and they all think the same thing and they're all telling you you're right, sometimes that's the worst thing you want. The best thing is to have a good friend that takes you to one side and goes, what are you doing? That's a terrible idea. So sometimes adding that little bit of divergence into the mix, I think, can be helpful as well.
Amazingly said, as always. Absolutely. What Michael and I, we are trying to do on part of this conversations and these recordings and this video is more about creating hope. We're not the type of person who will say, only this certain people can do it, you cannot. or we're also not the type of person who creates logic and says you're bound by these rules and no one can break them. As Michael rightly said, the divergence factor. All we want to do is, who knows that you cannot change? None of us, not even you yourself, not even the audience, not even us. So if you don't know it, why don't you do it? Do it and then realize whether this works for you or not. Interestingly, my father, in 61 years of his life, he's never cooked. In the last 6 months, he has cooked 70 dishes for us. And he is an amazing chef, not even a cook, he's an amazing chef. So who said that he wasn't able to cook? Himself, honestly, first. But he broke his user manual. But what happened? It led to opening up newer chapters of user manual. So your user manual is not finished yet. And that's the hope we wish to build towards it. Now, we'll have plenty more. Impact is just not a 40-minute, 50-minute conversation. Could have a part 3. I believe Michael agrees with me as well that this requires a part 3 of this conversation. But that's one thing that I personally would want to leave this out, is that the whole point of doing this is to build that hope that yes, impact is possible. Impact is possible by you, and impact is possible by us. What do you think, Michael?
Nothing more to add. Be hopeful. You can make the impact. 100%. Just go for it.
Absolutely. So please do check out Loving Leadership. And I think that is a fantastic book for you to actually gear towards what this impact and the need to have it, the need to want it, the need to grow into it as a leader and as a person and as a human being. So powerful. And before I even finish this conversation, I want to thank Michael for writing a book in such a necessity times and in such a necessity manner. Thank you so much. And we wish all the very best for you and your journey. Your journey is unique because you're unique. You're historically and figuratively and literally and in future the only one who's ever been made as an audience, as a person. So embrace that, enhance on that, and empower yourself in this path. And for whatever smallest of things that you need from us, I believe Michael and I, we will always be here for you. Thank you very much. And I'll let Michael finish our session today.
Thank you very much, Arif. All I would say to add to that, you are special. Look after yourself. Take care and speak soon.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.